Hello kids and welcome back to our 6th standard Sainik school English language course by Ma Tutorials. My name is Anmol and I am your guide through this journey of the English language. You must remember we have already done 6 lessons. The first one we started with the kind of sentences that there are in the English language. We moved on to the parts of speech. We studied the 9 different types of parts of speech. We started exploring those parts of speech. Then we spent a couple of lessons on the nouns. Then we moved on to pronouns, we did adjectives. And today we are digging into verbs. So let's, without any further delay, start. We are going to be covering these 5 points on verbs: definition, types of verbs. So we are covering definition, we are covering types of verbs, we are covering linking verbs, we are covering modal verbs, and we are covering usage of these modals. Let's start with the definition. An action word. What is a verb? A verb is an action word. Any word that denotes an action, any word that tells us about something that is happening is a verb. For example, Sita plays. Plays is an action, playing anything. They might be playing an instrument or they might be playing a sport like tennis. Ram is eating. Eating is an action. Both of these are verbs. They can be divided into 2 types. Verbs can be divided into 2 types. One is an auxiliary verb and one is an ordinary verb. So the definition of verb, it is an action word. Example, Sita plays, Ram is eating. And these verbs then can be divided into 2 types. First, the auxiliary verb or the helping verb, it's also called. It's called a helping verb because it helps the main verb. It helps us in understanding more about the context. What does it help us in understanding? Auxiliaries, the auxiliary verbs, they distinguish the sentence in different persons, numbers, moods, voices, and tenses. So the auxiliaries tell us about this, that what person are we talking in, whether are we talking in first person, second person or third person. You must remember that from pronouns. If any of that doesn't strike a chord with you, make sure to go back to the previous lessons and do your revision. Numbers, whether it is singular or plural. We're talking about moods, whether it is subjunctive, indicative, imperative. We're talking about voices, whether it is an active or passive voice, or we're talking about tenses, whether it's in past, present, future, whether it is simple, continuous, perfect, or perfect continuous. So all of these are told by the auxiliary verbs. We'll move ahead. Auxiliaries are further divided into 2 kinds. You will see that auxiliaries are further divided into 2 kinds. These auxiliaries, those which can function both as the main verb and an auxiliary. So auxiliaries are of 2 kinds. One kind is where those words can function as the main verb also and an auxiliary also and a helping verb also. And those which function only as auxiliaries. Then there are auxiliaries which will function only as auxiliaries and cannot be used without another verb. These are also called modals. We will cover this today. You must remember the 5 topics that we discussed, we are going to be covering on verbs. Modals was one of them. So there are auxiliaries that can work both as main verb and an auxiliary. That work as a main verb means they can exist by themselves. They can be used by themselves. And then there are auxiliaries which cannot be used by themselves, which need another helping verb along with them, which need another main verb to be present along with them. And such auxiliaries are called modals. Now the first kind of auxiliaries, the first kind, which means the main verb, can be used as a main verb also. The first kind of auxiliaries are 3: to be, to have, and to do. To be is to be something, to be a boy, to be big, to be successful, to be happy, to have something, to have knowledge, to have wisdom, to have love, to have care, to have wealth, to have health, or to do something, to work, to do your work, to do your dishes, even that means to wash your dishes, but to do something. So to do, to have, and to be are the kind of auxiliaries that can be used as main verbs as well. They can be used by themselves. The present form of be is, are, and am. The present form is, are, and am. When I use it with I will say am. When I use it with a third person singular, he, she, or it, I will use is. And for all other instances, I will use are. Similarly, its past is was and were, and the future is will be and shall be. So for B, we see the present forms are is, am, are, and am. The past form of be is was and were, and the future will be and shall be, which means the same thing. Will and shall pretty much means the same thing here. Then we have, the present form of have being have and has, the past form being had, and the future will have, shall have. And then there is do, the present form being do and does for third person singular, then the past form being did, and future will do and shall do. Now we'll move further into the types of verbs. The two types of verbs are transitive and intransitive. Transitive and intransitive. Now what is the difference between a transitive and an intransitive verb? We see the definition here. Transitive verbs take an object. If a verb takes an object, then it is transitive. I play cricket. The verb play is taking the object cricket there. Their play is being used transitively. Intransitive verbs do not take an object. I am sleeping. Sleeping there is an intransitive verb. It is not taking an object. Intransitive verbs that do not take an object. In the case of intransitive verb, the idea is complete without an object. When I say I am sleeping, the idea that I am trying to put forth is complete without adding anything else. Intransitive verb, idea is complete without an object. But in a transitive verb, when the verb is being used transitively, then the idea will be incomplete without an object. That is why we need to add an object. So transitive verbs, they do take an object. Intransitive verbs, they do not take an object. Digging further into intransitive and transitive, we'll see intransitive verbs need an agent, a preposition, to transit the idea of the verb to the object if there is an object. Now, if with an intransitive object, with an intransitive verb, we do add something at the object place, we are going to need an agent, a preposition to add. For example, we laughed at the clown. So what is the agent here? At. That is the preposition that is being used to add the object here. We laughed at the clown. So laughed here is an intransitive verb, though it might look like it is taking an object, but it is not. It is using an agent, a preposition, to transit the idea. To transit the idea of laugh, that we are laughing at the clown, we need a preposition. And if we need a preposition to transit the idea, then it is an intransitive verb, though it might look like that it is taking an object. They were standing outside the classroom. So the verb here is laughed, at is the agent, standing here is the verb, outside is the agent. The agent that transits the idea. That is why it's called transitive and intransitive, because transitive verbs transit the idea by themselves. Intransitive verbs do not transit the idea by themselves. They need an agent of preposition to transit the idea for them to the object. Yes, and then transitive verbs do not take a preposition before its object. So as intransitive verbs were taking an agent, a preposition before their object, transitive verbs do not take a preposition before its object. Example, he received a scholarship. There is no preposition there. He received a scholarship. Received is being able to transit the idea by itself. I received a scholarship. She knows Mohan. She knows Mohan. We are not saying she knows to Mohan, or she knows in Mohan, or she knows inside Mohan, she knows at Mohan. No, she knows Mohan. Knows itself is transiting the idea towards the object. She wrote me a letter. She wrote me a letter. There are two objects here, a letter and me, direct object, a letter. She wrote a letter. And who did she write it to? Me. That's an indirect object. But both of these are objects and they do not need an agent or a preposition. Thus, these are transitively used here. Here, me is the indirect object, answering to whom, and letter is the direct object, answering to what. Let's do a quick revision before moving on to the third topic. So we started with definition and types of verbs. The next topic being linking verbs. We're going to be covering linking verbs in a minute. Let's do a quick revision. First of all was the definition. So it's an action word. We took two examples, plays and eating. Then we saw two kinds of verbs here. These are This is one way of dividing words into two kinds, auxiliary and ordinary verbs. Auxiliary verbs are helping verbs and they tell us about the persons, numbers, moods, voices and tenses of the sentences. Then we saw that auxiliaries can further be divided into two kinds. Two kinds, one that can function both as the main verb and an auxiliary, that do not need a main verb along with them, that can exist by themselves, and those that cannot exist by themselves, which are called modals. And you'll see modals is also our fourth topic as well. So the auxiliaries of first kind which can exist by themselves were three kinds: to be, to have and to do, be, have and do, and we saw the present, past and future forms of them. Be is are, am, past was, were, future will be, shall be. Have, present form, have and has, past form had, future will have, shall have. Do, present form do and does, past form did, future will do, shall do. Then we saw another kind of differentiation of verbs between transitive and intransitive. So there are two ways we are dividing verbs. First was auxiliary verbs and ordinary verbs. We can divide them into like that. And then those ordinary verbs we can divide into transitive and intransitive. So transitive verbs or even the auxiliary verbs. All the verbs can also be divided into transitive and intransitive. Difference being transitive verbs take an object because they can transit an idea by themselves. Intransitive verbs do not take an object. They can't transit the idea by themselves. If they take an object, then they will take it along with an agent, a preposition. Like we saw here, we laughed at the clown. They were standing outside the classroom. Intransitive verbs do not take a preposition before their objects. He received a scholarship. All of those are able to transit the idea by themselves to the object. She wrote me a letter. We saw here there were two objects. There was a direct object first, which was letter, a letter which answers the question, what? And then we have the indirect object, me, which answers the question, to whom? All right. Let's move on to our third topic for today, linking verbs. Now, linking verbs, they act as links between their subject and subject complement. So now when linking verbs are there, they do not have an object. What do they carry? They carry a subjective complement. That is what they have. So they have a subject and the verb and then not the object but subjective complements. Linking verbs such as is, am, are, was, were, become, fall, feel, appear, look, seem, grow, remain, small, contain, taste, own. Is, am, are, was, were, become, fall, feel, appear, look, seem, grow, remain, small, contain, taste, own, etc. So present is used with a singular number subject. Remember, is used with a singular number subject. He, she, it, is. Am is used with I am. And are is used with plural number subjects. We are, you are, they are. Past was is used with singular number subjects and were is used with plural number subjects. I was, we were. Linking verbs. Then we'll move on to modal verbs. Now, express the mode or manner of action denoted by the verbs. What do modal verbs do? They express the mood or manner. They express the mode or the manner of action denoted by the verbs. Cannot be used alone. Modal verbs cannot be used alone. I'm sure you remember from this. We just did that auxiliaries can be divided into two kinds. There are one that can be used by themselves, which were to be, to have and to do. Then there were ones which cannot be used by themselves and they were called modals. And modals have to be used with other verbs. So they express, and what do modals do? They express an idea. Ideas like possibility, ability, probability, duty, obligation. So modal verbs are used to express ideas. Ideas like possibility, that something is possible maybe. Ability, that I can do something. Probability, that something may happen. Duty, that I ought to do something. And obligation, that I must do something. All of these are modals. Now we'll study there are 13 kind of modals in all. I'll show you the 13 kind of modals. Let's start Reading all of these kinds, read with me. Can, could, may, might, will, would, shall, should, must, ought to, need, dare, used to. Now we will dig further into these 13 kind of modals and figure out what they are used for and how. We will start with can. So can expresses, what does it express? It expresses power or ability or capacity. It expresses your power, the ability or capacity of the subject to do something. For example, the accountant can increase your salary. So see, it is used along with another verb, increase. Can is a modal, can increase. It tells about the power, that the accountant has the power to increase your salary. I can solve the problems easily. I'm talking about my ability. I'm able. I'm so capable that I can solve all the problems easily. I can solve. Solve is the verb here, main verb. Can is the modal. He can lift this box. He can lift this box. You're talking about capacity is strong enough. His capacity of strength is strong enough to lift that box. So he can lift that box. The first modal, can. Our second modal, could. Now could expresses a polite request, power, ability or possibility of something. Polite request, power, ability or possibility of something. Example, could you help me? It's a polite request. Could you help me? Could you help me please? So helping here is the primary verb which it is supporting. Could is the modal verb for it. It could rain tomorrow. It could rain tomorrow. Possibility. We're talking about possibility. Maybe it will rain tomorrow. Maybe it will not. It could rain tomorrow. It could. There is a possibility that it will rain tomorrow. My brother could beat him. We're talking about capacity. That my brother could beat him. My brother is capable enough to beat him. You could drive a car. Ability, it's also a suggestion. It's also a suggestion here. You could drive a car. You could drive a car. How will I go there? You could drive. Maybe you could drive. You could drive. It's a suggestion as well. Could. Let's move on to our next modal. May. Now may expresses permission, possibility, wish or purpose. May expresses permission, possibility, wish or purpose. Example, may I use your pen? May I use your pen? What am I asking for? A permission. Alright, there'll be a question mark here. Make sure to correct it. This will not be a full stop. It'll be a question mark. We're going to make the corrections. May I use your pen? Asking for permission. She may come today. She may come today. Possibility. She may come today. There is a possibility she will come today. She may come today. She is free today. She may come. May he live long. May he live long. Hail Lord Rama, may he live long. Or hail King Caesar, may he live long. Whoever. He may take extra class to pass the exam. Purpose. He may take extra class to pass the exam. And we are giving permission as well. Here, we're giving a purpose to the person. He may take extra class to pass the exam. We have a purpose to pass the exam and we may do something. We have a permission to fulfill our purpose. May. So you see the modals that we covered till now: can, could, and may. Can is used for power, ability, capacity. Could is used as a polite request, power, ability, or possibility. And may is used as a permission, possibility, wish, or purpose. Then we move on to our next modal, might. Might, which is also the past of may. It expresses remote possibility. A remote possibility of something means a distant possibility, very less possibility. Permission or possibility in the past. For example, your sister is working hard, so she might pass the exam. Your sister is working hard, so she might pass the exam. There is a remote possibility that she might. It is a very hard exam, but because your sister is working hard, she might pass it. The commander said that they might be attacked. Possibility in the past. The commander said that they might be attacked. We're talking about the commander having said, and in the present form, he would have said, we may get attacked. But now, because we're talking about it in the past, we will replace may with might. The commander said that they might be attacked. Might I suggest an idea? Permission. May I suggest an idea can be replaced with may also. Might I suggest an idea? Might I help you out with it a bit? Might. Our next modal is will. Now, what does will do? Will expresses promise. I will do something. I will help you. I will teach you. Willingness. The willingness of doing something. When you want to do something, that is called willingness. A threat can be used as a threat or determination. Or determination. So threat, how will we use it as a threat? We will beat them. Now this is determination, but in a sense determination against someone. So we can call it a threat. We will beat them. I will break the records. Challenge. I will break the records. We will pass the exam. Determination. It's a determination. We will pass the exam. Will you open the window, please? It's a request. Will you open the window, please? It's a request. Will. Let's move on to our next modal, would. Now, as might was the past of may, would is the past of will. Expresses habitual activity in past. Habitual activity in past. In the past, if you had a habit, if you want to talk about that, then you will use would. As a polite request, requesting something politely. As a wish, as a preference. Preference to choose one thing over the other. Which would you prefer? A chocolate or an ice cream? Or which flavor would you prefer? Chocolate or vanilla? Or strawberry or vanilla? So what is your preference? Which one do you like more? Preference. Improbable or unreal condition. Improbable or unreal condition. Improbable or unreal condition, something that is improbable, that probably would not happen. Unreal, that cannot happen. Some condition that is just in the imagination. So how will we talk about habitual activity in the past? He would go for a swim in the Ganga. It's a habitual activity. He would go for a swim in the Ganga. Maybe he was living in Banaras for some time, for a year. And during that year, he would go for a swim in the Ganga every day. He would go for a swim in the Ganga every day. Maybe he was living in Banaras at one point in time, or maybe Rishikesh, or maybe some other point along the holy Ganga. All right. Would you take a cup of tea? Would you take a cup of tea? It's a polite request. Would you take a cup of tea? Would you take a cup of tea? Polite request. Would that I were a prince. This is a wish. We can use it would. We can use would like this. It is not usually used in modern English anymore. It is more about medieval English. I think during the Victorian era, and Shakespeare would have used perhaps something like that. Would that I were a prince. I wish I were a prince. I wish I were a prince is what it means. Would that I were a prince. I would rather die than beg. This is a preference. I would rather die than beg. Or I would rather eat chocolate ice cream than strawberry ice cream. Maybe we don't have to be so serious. Maybe I would rather eat. So I would rather talk about preference. Would is being used to talk about preference. If I won a lottery prize, I would build a palace. This is improbable or unreal condition. This is talking about something in the air. Very few people win the lottery. There are more chances of someone dying in accident while going to buy a lottery ticket than winning the lottery. That is how difficult it is to win a lottery. So if you win a lottery prize, I would build a palace. If I won a lottery prize, I would build a palace. So I would build a palace. Here I'm using would to talk about an improbable or unreal condition. Our next modal, shall. Shall is like will, but sometimes when we are offering a suggestion or when we are offering something, offering assistance, there we use shall, and will cannot be used at that place. We will see. It expresses what? It expresses promise. When you promise something that I shall do it. Threat. He shall not follow the rules. Willingness. When I show willingness of doing something, the want of doing something. Determination. Strong decision making capability, that I've decided something and I'm going to do it. Nothing can stop me. That is determination. When I offer assistance or I make a suggestion. Example, you shall get a leave today. Promise, you shall get a leave today. Don't worry about it. You shall get a leave today. Shall he carry your luggage? It's a wish. We're asking for a wish. Shall we carry your luggage? What do you wish? Do you wish for him to carry your luggage? Shall he carry your luggage? Now we cannot use will here. We can use will here. You will get leave today. Means the same thing. But we cannot use will in place of shall if it is a question. And we're suggesting something or asking for a wish. He shall not follow the rules. It's a threat. He shall not follow the rules. Do not trust him. He shall not follow the rules. Shall I post this letter for you? It's an offer. Shall I post this letter for you? Can I? May I post this letter for you? Do you want me to post this letter for you? Is what I'm asking. When I want to ask, do you want me to do something for you? I can use shall. Shall I do it for you? Are you sure you want me to do it? Shall I do it for you? It's an offer or a suggestion. Shall. Let's move on to our next modal, should. Now, should expresses purpose. That you should do something. Someone should do something. It expresses what? Purpose. Or advice. That you should study every day. You should brush your teeth in the morning. You should take a bath. You should eat healthy food. You should exercise. You should respect your parents. You should respect everyone in their own way. Suggestion. You should get a haircut. Maybe. Get your hair like me. Inference. Or we can make an inference. I should become an engineer by then. If you're studying for your engineering course and you're talking about 4 years later and you know it's a 4-year course, you can say, okay, I should become an engineer by then. So you're inferring that 4 years later, my 4-year course will be complete. I would become an engineer by then. Duty or obligation. Duty is something that your existence requires you to do. It is your duty as a student to study. It is my duty as a teacher to teach. It is the Prime Minister's duty to take care of the entire population of the country. It is the duty of a fireman to extinguish fire and the duty of an army person to defend their country. Obligation is something which can be situational. That you are obliged at your guest's place to accept anything that they offer and not demand better food, let's say. So, should. Let's take some examples. I said that I should go. I said that I should go. Here it is being used as past of shall. We should respect everyone. Duty and advice. He works hard lest he should fail. It's a purpose. Lest he should fail, he means he works hard so that he does not fail. So lest he should means so that he does not. Lest he should completely means so that he does not. I should become an engineer by them. Inference, which we already talked about. Alright, let's move on to our next modal, which is must. Now must expresses necessity, obligation, prohibition, certainty of belief. So must expresses necessity, that something is necessary, it must be done. Obligation, again, you're obliged, you must be honest. Prohibition, you must not lie, You must not lie. And certainty of belief. All must enjoy life and die sooner or later. A servant must obey his master. Obligation. It's an obligation that a servant must obey his master. She must take medicine. But a servant can choose. He can choose not to obey the master. But we are saying must because it's an obligation. But when I say all must die sooner or later, it's certainty of belief. It's not a choice. Here, the servant can choose to disobey. We are just advising. We are saying the servant is obliged, obligated. The servant has an obligation to obey the master. But all must die sooner or later. Well, there is no choice there. She must take medicine. Necessity, if she wants to get better, she must take medicine. You must study. If you want to clear your examinations and become very successful, you must work hard. She must be at least 40 years old. This is inference. I saw a woman. Somebody asked, how old was she? Well, she must be 40 years old. She looked somewhere around that. She must be 40 years old. Our next modal. Ought to. Ought to. Ought to. It talks about moral obligation now. Morality. What is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. These are things that our morality decides. Strong possibility. Strong possibility of something. When something is strongly possible that yes, it will happen, then we use ought to. Or unfulfilled duty or desire. Any unfulfilled, which has not been fulfilled, which is not complete, which still remains incomplete. We ought to serve our country. It's a moral obligation. Every countryman ought to serve their country. They are getting benefits of being a countryman of that country. They are using the social setup of that place. They ought to be good countrymen and serve their country. We ought to serve our country. She ought to pass this time. Strong possibility. She ought to pass this time. It's a strong possibility. She ought to. She's been working so hard. She's been working so hard for her examinations. She's been working so hard. She ought to pass this time. I ought to work hard. Unfulfilled duty or desire. Now, I ought to work hard. It's an unfulfilled duty or desire. I have not been working hard. Perhaps I ought to work hard, or maybe I have been working hard and I ought to work harder now. I ought to work hard. Ought to. Let's move on to our next modal, which is need. Our next modal, need. It expresses necessity, obligation, compulsion. Need expresses necessity, necessity of doing something, something is necessary, something is absolutely necessary to be done. An obligation that we should do something, and a compulsion, we ought to do something, can be used with need. She need not buy a car. Or absence of necessity. So she need not, she does not have the necessity. Need not. Not tells that it is not necessary for her to buy. She need not buy a car. They have a metro, a well-functioning metro and good public transportation in their city. She need not buy a car. Need I go there? Compulsion. Need I go there? Like, do I need to go there? Do I need to go there is the same as saying, need I go there? Asking for a compulsion. Is it compulsory for me to go there? Or can I skip this time? Children need their parents' support. It's an obligation. Children need their parents' support. Children need their parents' support. Our next modal is dare. Expresses venture, courage and challenge. What is venture? Venture is an adventure. Anything that you do, any task that you take up to perform is a venture. Studies are a venture, job is a venture, living is a venture, going out with friends is a venture. Anything at all is a venture, short or long. Example, will anyone dare to go into the jungle at night? They're asking. Are you daredevil enough to go for this adventure? Will anyone dare to go into the jungle at night? I don't think so. How dare you contradict me? How dare you contradict me? Contradict means to say something against them. To say something that you are wrong. That whatever you are saying is wrong. It should be other way. Another way maybe. That is contradiction. How dare you contradict me? Courage. They were questioning courage. We're questioning the other person's courage. How dare you do that? I dare you to face me. This is a challenge that we are giving people in front of us. I dare you to face me. Don't talk behind my back. I dare you to face me. Dare. And our last modal for today, and thus the last topic of discussion for this session, used to, goes with the infinitive of other verbs to make the habitual past tense. So it goes with the infinitive of other words. I used to live there when I was a child. Goes with the infinitive of other verbs. Live and help are the infinitive verbs here. Used to about habitual past tense. It tells us about a habit in the past, that I used to do something at that time. For example, I used to live there when I was a child. When I was a child, it's past. I used to live there. I used to live in Lucknow when I was a child. He used to help you in times of need. Now, he used to help you in times of need. Maybe I'm trying to convince you to help him now, that he needs your help. You should help him because he used to help you in your times of need. So, used to. Use as the habitual past tense. Used for expressing or making the habitual past tense. Telling about a habit in the past, we use used to. Alright. That is that for today. Make sure to go through all the chapters again for revision's sake. If there are any slight gaps in your knowledge, if any of this you did not understand, make sure to go through this lecture once again. You will get the resources along with the files and the folders that has been provided with you. In the resources, the worksheets will be available, the practice for this and the PPT itself. Thank you for joining me again, and I'll see you in the next one.